Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, I will just dig in, like, about gravity without airs. How did that? I mean, I know you played with Michael Bisio a lot, actually, but with Matt, I don't know. I don't think I had you before on any albums, but like, how did this trio happen, actually?
So the way it happened was, yes, exactly through Michael Bisio and through Whit Dickey.
Oh yeah.
So I work a lot with Whit as well, and we've made a couple duo records, and we made a trio record that is going to be released, I believe, next year.
Oh,
with Michael on bass, and then Whit and Michael both play with Matthew, and so we'd talk about it all the time. Someday we're going to put something together, and then it just decided, all right, it's going to happen,
Yeah.
And Whit was excited about helping to be the executive producer of it. So, and he's the guy behind the Dow Forums label, which is a really cool new label. Everything they put out is awesome, and they do a really good job with design and everything, with also working through Ohm Fidelity Records.
Yeah.
So that's how it came about, and through talks with Michael about it for a while. Like, we have to find the time and find the how to do it, and then I wrote the music, and we got the time, and then we also improvised a bunch of the music, and it came together perfectly. It was the first time I'd ever played with Matthew.
Really? Okay. Wow. Okay.
So, and then we also just recently recorded a duo recording, the two of us.
Really? Oh man, looking forward. Woo.
Yeah. So that will be on the Rogue Art label.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometime next year.
Fantastic.
And we also recorded another duo with Michael Bisio. So it's like we just kept getting at it, and that'll be on the No Business label.
Oh, the pop Lithuanian,
label at the end of the year, maybe September, November, around then will be the next duo with Michael.
Wow.
That was recorded actually a little bit before Gravity Without Airs.
But
it just, different labels have different timelines, and that's how it goes.
So basically, like 5 albums coming out now and within a year or something. That's great, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and it's such a special crew of guys, and every time you get together with any of them, it's a completely different experience. So that's why it's fascinating to keep working together. So that's how that specific record came together. And then I'm also excited about the way it looks. There's a lady I met through Facebook named Robin D. Williams, who I contacted about doing the art, because she friended me a long time ago, and I would see the art that she put up, and it was awesome. So I thought, okay, this is the person that I want to do the artwork. And then I always hoped that I could get Francis Davis to someday do some liner notes, because he's written about me in the past, and he's one of my all-time favorite jazz writers. So that he also agreed to write about it and was excited about it, made this whole package of the record very exciting.
Yeah.
And we have coming up with that.
Yeah,
and,
I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, we're going to play at a place called the Lace Mill in well, it's actually where Michael Bisio lives, right in the same kind of big complex in Kingston, New York. Okay, Kingston, New York, and then we're going to play at Roulette in New York.
Oh, okay.
Working on other things. We tried to make, trying to make other things happen with it, so it'll also be happening live.
Oh, beautiful, man. Yeah. What about Michael? I mean, I know you guys have played together quite a long time, but when was the first time you hooked up?
It was with a great saxophone player named Stephen Gauci.
Oh,
put
okay.
together, and that's got to be 12 or years ago or something like that. That Michael and I were in, and then Michael and I just hit it off and started getting together, doing different things, including his projects, our duos, but also this trio we have with Fred Longberg Home, and Michael also made a great quartet record a few years ago called the A Quartet with Art Bailey on accordion and Michael Wimberly on drums.
I have to check it out. I don't have that. Okay.
Yeah, that's on relative pitch.
Oh, okay, cool. That's easy to find. Okay.
And as our first duo is also on relative pitch.
Yeah.
And one of the trios, because we used to work with the late Mike Panico of that label, was a close friend of ours. And when he passed away, we made the second trio dedicated to him.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah, beautiful to hear you guys when you play. It's so beautiful. I mean, like.
Thank you. It's fun. That's a fun trio. It's like the strings plus strings trio kind of a thing in the micro, organization. Those are great guys.
Yeah, definitely.
That all came about. And Michael presents gigs. And he and Fred used to have a series at a place called the Beverly up in Kingston. So I'd play, and then also playing at the Lace Mill up there too. And then when he comes to New York, but I made a lot of bus rides up to Kingston to play with those guys in their hometown. Yeah,
definitely. Well, what about your writing? I mean, when I listen to the new one with Matt, it's like, this, of course, the absence of drums makes it, maybe that's why, like, really intimate in a way, and the melodies are, really nice melodies, but it can go abstract. I mean, when I listen to your music, I kind of listen a lot to you now these days, just to get in the mood, and you are everywhere, going from this kind of almost straight aheadish to, I mean, writing wise, or this one is quite unique again. So how do you prepare for a project? I mean, when composing?
I compose like in big spurts, like practicing, and also because my instrument demands it, practicing is a constant thing that I also really love, that I have to do all the time, otherwise I go crazy. And then composing happens in big floods of stuff. Like I just wrote a bunch of stuff on this trip because I don't know why. Certain things get inspiring, and then they come out, and then I write everything down and put it in these big binders. And then as I'm preparing for something, I'll also get inspired too to write something.
Sure.
And then as getting closer to something that's coming up, I go through all my music, and if anything sparks my feeling like, well, this would work for this band, even though I'm sure everything would work for everything in a way, because
sure. I mean,
that's what we're working on. But there's certain things that you just see, and that you just pull it out and say, I'll try this. And for this one, I pulled out many more things than we played and then we actually used. And in the days leading up to it, I just kind of tried to take out some and get a more distilled thing, because I had the idea that it would be kind of not half composed things, but maybe and that's what it ended up being. And I waited in the session to pull things out towards the end, so let's freely improvise first and see what happens, and then keep doing it, not just do it once, because that's also an interesting thing. Sometimes when you get together brand new people and you say, let's freely improvise something, it's somehow, it's always great, but it gets more interesting the second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. The first one has this initial kind of looking around thing, which is wonderful and awesome to catch on tape. And then as you keep digging deeper, you get into all kinds of other stuff, which we did that day, which was really, really, really fun.
Yeah.
And right off the bat.
Do you like when you write, you know, ideas, are these like finished, or do you then like, you know, chew on them? Or I mean, like, are these snippets like 5-bar phrases, or just like a melody or a chord progression, and then you work on it, or do you usually finish like, you know?
That's a good question, because I often just keep whatever the first complete idea was.
Oh, okay.
And I don't. Sometimes I don't add anything to it ever again, or maybe
okay.
one thing or the other, unless I really want to write something that does have a form. Or sometimes as I practice whatever that first idea was a few times, then a B part will come out. But I don't necessarily sit at the piano and say, okay, now I have to write a bridge for this song.
Oh, sure.
Like, I didn't, you know, trying to do that years ago, I didn't feel like it was the best way to do it. So if I have an idea and I feel like it's the whole idea, then I don't feel like, okay, it has to go somewhere else, or there has to have an intro, or sometimes it'll come along with an intro, it'll come along with a bass line, but there's no set formula of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but also I often think of bass line first. That's something that happens.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That'll just sit around for a while until I figure out what else should happen. And sometimes nothing else comes up, and then we'll just play the bass line.
Yeah.
That's also another thing too. Or so, and then a lot of things have no chords, and it's everybody, you know, to do whatever they hear.
Yeah.
It's
how did you learn that? The right, because I've read that you're self-taught, right? That you didn't study, actually. Like, how did your, I mean, I'm also like music-wise, I didn't study jazz, and you know, I played with Mark Helias the first time in New York, and he was like, yeah, man, you sound different. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But how does your story with, you know, learning to compose, and I mean, especially learning to improvise, how did that go?
Well, for the composition part of it, it really came through a lot of, like, most of the composition come through either playing these things on my instrument or singing them. So if I get an idea, then I sing it into recorder and then transcribe it, figure out what's going on, or play it. And I got to spend a lot of time with Ornette Coleman, and he almost always wrote by playing.
How did that happen?
That's an interesting story. So when I moved to New York, I became quick friends with Kenny Wollesen, great drummer.
Yeah, sure. I love Kenny. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he said, hey, Kirk, you want to go see Dewey Redman play? I said, absolutely. Ooh. So we went to see Dewey Redman play in Central Park Summer Stage, and there was Ornette Coleman to listen to Dewey. And I just didn't even think about it. I just kind of ran in his direction, and I actually missed him. He went back behind the stage. I'm like, I just have to talk to him. And then he stayed back there the rest of the concert. So I had to just decide which exit that I hoped he would come out of. So I chose one, because originally, and after a while they kicked me out because everybody left, but he was still backstage with the other musicians. And I just went out to one of the sides, and he luckily came out that side, and I tried to calmly say, Mr. Coleman, I love your music, and I just moved here from Colorado. And he said, oh, how you doing? And we started walking through the park, and he said, oh, I have to take the train uptown, or no, I have to take the train downtown, but I had to go uptown. But I said, yeah, me too. So I just took the train downtown with him, and then just to try to have as much time with him as possible. Sure. And then he invited me over to his house.
Oh, wow.
And he said, just give me a call before you come over, like an hour before or something. There's just open invitation. And so then I just kept going over there.
What did you guys do? Did you play together, or like talk?
And talked, and sometimes for hours and hours.
Man,
and it was really like a shocking experience. I actually didn't tell any of my friends for months, because I didn't want to sound like, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
Also, like, I kind of wanted to keep it a secret because it was so weird, you know, it was so awesome. So that's how that came about. So I watched him write, and he would just sit at his desk and just play his horn for a while and like something and then write it down. And it was just very organic. He didn't write down the rhythms most of the time. He would just write down the pitches.
Yeah.
As he sat and played. And then that's also how a lot of his melodies would kind of morph over time, because the intervals and the pitches would kind of start to shape the rhythm more and more. He didn't make it really
strict in a way. Yeah.
Thing. And sometimes he said, I don't want to, his voice was so high, I almost want to talk like him. But he said, sometimes I don't remember how it goes until I play it. You have these manuscripts sitting around.
Wow.
So sometimes just with the letters, like A, G sharp, F, not written on a staff. That was also really interesting. So I wanted to write like that, and that informed me a lot.
Oh, sure. Come on. It's one of the greats, you know. I mean, he's one of my favorites, man. It's like, wow, that's incredible. What about playing the instrument? What got you excited for jazz, actually? I mean, what was the moment?
For me, I not learning how to read music for a long time. Improvising was just a natural thing. I just wanted to play the cornet and I just pick it up and start playing. And when I was like 12 years old, and sometimes I'd just turn on the television and play while I was watching TV and kind of try to play what was happening in cartoons and the music that was like just trying to play things by ear, and then turning on the radio and playing and improvising. And it was before I knew about jazz, because there wasn't jazz in my house growing up. And then in my last year of middle school in Colorado, which is like, well, they actually called junior high there, so it was ninth grade. There was kind of a student teacher, and he said, I want to have a jazz band after school if you want to do it, to the kids. And I was, yes, absolutely. So then it's like, this is kind of like what I've been doing. You know, it was we would just kind of play over very simple things. He wasn't trying to make us do anything really complicated off the bat, which it was really nice, because sometimes in jazz teaching, it's like kids can hardly play, and then you give them chord progressions that they don't know what it means and melodies that they can't play, and then the whole thing is just this bizarre, frustrating thing. like Lester Bowie said, you got to play your instrument for 10 years and then you got to practice for jazz for 10 years after that. Kind of like this, you know, you can't start them both at the same time. But in a way you kind of can, but not in what, like, it's not like that's going to be like Donnelly or Giant Steps or something. But I think you can start improvising right away.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
When I have students, and I love to teach little kids in like a workshop kind of way, and get them improvising right off the bat with just a couple of notes, and say, okay, now you can play these 2 notes, now just try to do it as many ways as you can, kind of thing. And then they get excited about it, because they don't have to think about what will I play. You know, people are always thinking about what will I play in terms of note choice, and then rhythm is like an afterthought or something. You take just give people the notes and then make them improvise a rhythm. That's a better direction.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
I would just play, and then we did the jazz band thing. And then when I went to high school, I was in the jazz band again, and I still couldn't really read. I was playing by ear, but I loved to improvise, and I'd get together with my friends and improvise. And that's also when I started playing duos with drums.
Oh, wow.
I had a friend named Marshall Van Stone, who passed away, but he and I would get together in his basement and record to cassette tape cornet and drum duos, and then listen back to them and talk about like if it was good or not. And some of those tapes still exist.
Oh, wow, man.
They're really funny. they're really charming, I think, because I didn't know anything about different keys or anything, you know. So, but I found like with playing with just drums, that was a way to get into it, because I also tried to get together with like other friends and play guitar. And when we were little, you know, it's like, this kind of sounds pretty bad, you know. so if you play with just the drums, we can get into it, you know, at that way before you know anything theoretical and or before
Yeah,
you're
but
together and stuff like that. So that's how the obsession with improvising came along. And I kind of thought, which is the thing that Matt Wilson, the drummer, loves to make fun of me and tell people, is that I thought that I invented free improvisation, because when I went to the jazz band and then they handed out chord progressions and we tried to play over these forms and stuff, I said to my friends, man, we should just play, you know, we don't need to worry about all this stuff. Let's just get together and play. No, that'll sound terrible. No, man, trust me, we can do this. And then come to find out, this kind of thing had been going on for all of human history. But I thought that I came up with it.
Like the grand idea, man. Like
I was young and I was in Colorado.
Oh man, that's fantastic. But did you then like start transcribing solos, or like, you know, like how did you learn the language then? I mean, like, you know.
Well, it was so, and the other part of that whole story is I didn't really learn how to read music until I was like 23 or 24 years old.
Wow, man, really?
Musical way. I mean, especially rhythmically. So I learned things by ear, and it was a long road. Even though I figured out how to sound good when I was a kid, so you could get by on that. And I did a lot of bands where, you know, we'd learn like horn lines, and I played in funk groups, and I played in a lot of blues bands when I was a kid, and ska bands, and we'd get together and figure stuff out. And also when there was kind of a swing revival, I mean, I could get it together, but it was like, definitely couldn't sight read at all. When I did a cruise ship gig, and then I thought, well, this sucks. You know, the sight reading is so embarrassing. I've got to get this together. So I got that together. But so that also meant I found transcribing very tedious in the writing down way. But I learned phrases.
Yeah.
So, and especially Chet Baker, Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard. At the early stages, I loved these guys and old guys. I really also, when I was a kid, loved Al Hurt, and I still love Al Hurt. He's a guy nobody talks about. Fantastic player. So I would learn just phrases, and then I got the record called Chet Baker with Strings, and I learned how to play the whole record. So I put it on and play the whole record.
Oh man, wow.
So my dad really liked that. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, sure.
In the basement and just play the whole thing. And so then I heard Lester Bowie, and I got like totally blown away by that, and started learning some of his phrases and stuff. But then I never really wanted to employ them on the gig. In fact, I remembered when I did it once and I got a creepy feeling. So there was because I was like, I'm supposed to be improvising, so I'm gonna improvise. Yeah. And I remember that there was a Chet Baker lick that I learned that started on the major 7. It's like or something like that. And I played it on the gig, and I was like, oh, that's weird. I shouldn't have done that. That wasn't mine, you know. So I love learning as much as I could, but then I didn't want to do it. I wanted to play as many things as I could to get everything rolling, but then I really wanted everything to be mine.
Yeah, that's so important.
Something that I talked with Ron Miles a lot about, who then became a really, really important person in my life when I was around 17 or 18 years old.
Already in Colorado, right? Because he was from Denver, right?
Yeah. So I was playing with a pianist, because I'm from Fort Collins, which is an hour away from Denver by car. And I was playing with a pianist out there named Mark Sloniker. And he was very nice to let me play because I was really young. And then he said, I'm playing with a very important trumpet player this Saturday. You got to come check it out. And it was Ron. And then I just asked Ron if we could get together, and he was also immediately very generous too. So then I drive my car down to Denver and see Ron pretty regularly, but he didn't give me lessons. he said, because I asked him for lessons, even though I didn't take lessons. I wanted to know what he was doing. And he said, you know what, I think we should just get together and play. He wasn't interested in teaching me lessons.
Interesting.
So, but that ended up being much better for me, because the way that I needed to learn was really slow, and I needed to ask questions and try to figure things out. And he said some marvelous things like, to, instead of trying to learn somebody's lick, look for the reason behind it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what note they started on and what note they ended on, and what happened in between, if it was arpeggiation, or if it was a scale, or if it was a mixture of the two, or what kind of intervals were used. If a person was doing something based on fourths, then don't play that fourths lick, try to make up your own licks based on fourths, or play around with it, you know, with the mixture, or play a chord on the piano and sustain pedal, and then try to play, you know, something like that, to figure out why they did it, not just do what they did. And that was really important. So Ron and Ornette, and then later Butch Morris, and those were the guys.
Yeah, I mean, come on, that's like the top there, you know, like that's incredible, man. Yeah, I mean, it's, wow. Like, but Butch you met in New York, right?
Yes.
But
so
how did you decide to move to New York first? Like, when was that decision made? Like,
well, I started playing professionally because luckily at the time, in like 1996, when I was 16 years old, we had a ska band and we had a swing band, and we started playing and making money, and it was cool because there was big revivals for both of those things happening. So as a brass player, you could go ska bands that were coming through town, and then I met Ron, and he was in Denver, and that's the big city if you live in Colorado. It's like, I didn't really think bigger than that at the time. Like, I'm going to move to Denver and be a jazz musician in Denver. So I did, and then I made great friends there and played a lot there. And I had a bunch of gigs, and I got an apartment and all this stuff. But then after a while, I lost a few of the gigs in Denver, and I was getting a little frustrated, and I talked to Ron about it, and he's like, "Oh man, you ever think about moving to New York?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And then I had a thought, well, if I can't make it in Denver, I don't need to worry about making it in New York, because they say if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, but I can't make it in Denver, so I've got nothing to lose. But that's also because there was, you know, I could have done things differently. It's kind of a joke, you know, but I really had been thinking about it for a long time, and I was also thinking that it would be cool to move to Chicago, and like, because it's great too. And so I thought, okay, we moved to New York. So I did, and it was, you know, luckily I made, even though I wasn't immediately able to make a living, I did immediately meet people like Kenny and Ornette and Butch, like, really, really fast, because Kenny introduced me to Butch Morris, and then I started playing with him.
Yeah.
Right. Really, like, within the first year of living there.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I played with Butch for 7 years.
Oh, that was probably amazing, right? I mean,
because he was really hard. He was like a strict.
Oh, really?
On the bandstand, he was actually kind of terrifying, but it was really, really good as a young person, because I felt like I was like a soldier in the Butch Morris army. And he also was he was a soldier too, and you know, in Vietnam, and he would, you know, he was like really, really serious. So that was the first time I went to Europe, and the first recording I made in was with Butch, and that's all thanks to Kenny for introducing me. And putting
interesting.
Was called Orchestra Slang with Butch, and then started playing in several of Butch's other bands, and one was called the New Blue Orchestra.
Yeah, I have that one. Yeah,
called New Blue. And then there was also some live records that came out from that, from those tours. So that's how I Butch.
That's incredible. I mean, just coming to New York, and then it's like immediately, you know, like you said, Ornette and Butch, and like, you know, like, man, what the?
No, when I say it out loud, it does sound funny. That's why I didn't even want to tell anybody about Ornette for like a long time, because I knew it was special, and also to go back to the compositional thing and the improvisational thing, a lot of how I think was influenced by Butch Morris and the way he put together music in his conductions, because it was really building blocks, and then how do you use them, and it could get very complicated, but it could also be like, let's play a long sound, let's play a short sound, and let's play or not play.
Yeah,
and you can actually do a lot with that. And when I work with beginning improvisers, we start with this kind of thing, like just play a sound and then stop, and then play another sound and then stop, and then listen to what's going on around in the room and play one more sound, and try to think about how long the sounds are. And that's you know, where Butch would start everything, and then thinking about repetition and repetition important, and how can you change it and then bring it back and bring it back in a different way, and to give things a shape. Because we never had in orchestra slang, we had music, and then we did a band called Sketch Salon that he had written music, but in New Blue Orchestra we never had any written music, and whole tours, but people really thought that we had memorized things, and there were actually discussions and arguments in the audience sometimes. Oh no, they memorized some of that stuff, or no, this is compositions, and no, it's not, it's the other thing. And there was one time when we were actually yelling at each other in Germany about it. So it was controversial. It was because he could make it sound like it was.
Yeah.
You know, and he also didn't. Sometimes there wasn't a lot of solos in the air quotes solos way. He didn't really want that. He wanted you to always give something to the band that could then be used.
Yeah.
So he had a sign called pedestrian, which is like come in, and it would just be this like come in sign, but like come here. And he didn't want you to just start. He's like, no, come on, I don't want that. I can't do anything with that.
Yeah.
You know, something you know, and then he'd say yes, and then tell everybody else, okay, start doing that, you know, because it's got space in it. And maybe saying too much just now because I'm excited, but he would want a little more space because he wants other, you know, polyrhythms to happen. But anyway, so he would give us a pep talk before every concert about like, don't just start hot dogging, you know, I don't want to hear that. I want give us something that we can all use and build on. So that was really informative.
How were these first tours like that you did? I mean, coming the first time to Europe, because the band was big also, right?
It was big, and it was really awesome because I was playing cornet, and then Graham Haynes was playing cornet. Kind of like a stereo band, except for the bass. So there was 2 guitars, 2 drums, 2 cornets, 2 saxophones, and then one bass usually. Every once in a while live would be electric bass and acoustic bass. But then he would do things, and we'd set up opposite. So I wasn't sitting next to Graham because we were both playing cornet. He was sitting opposite sides of the band. And then he would split the band down the middle and have something different happening in one side, like different tempo and stuff like that. And those were just really exciting. I mean,
I can imagine.
Playing with North Sea Jazz Festival and you know, Saalfeld and then all this stuff, right? It was almost overwhelming. But I had Kenny there as kind of like helping me, you know, also just to get places. For one of the very first concerts, Kenny was just like waking me up. We had to take all these trains. For some reason we were independent from the band, and he and Jonathan Hafner and I were traveling, and saxophone players, and he was just waking us up like, all right guys, we gotta go. Like, oh okay, you know, and then we gotta go to this train, because he had by that time, you know, I've done it a million times.
Yeah, sure.
guy. So he was really, really sweet and helpful about everything, and he was supportive of me, and that was nice.
That's important. Yeah, definitely.
I was getting vibed or anything. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Yeah. Oh, like I said in the beginning, you've done so many records and so prolific as a writer and as a band leader. And but how did all that start? Bigwig. I love Jeff Davis, the drummer, and Ruben obviously also. But I didn't know Brian before that record, the trombone player. But like, how did you decide to do that record? Like, when did you feel you're ripe?
Well, that was I also made a record in Denver that never came out with a great bass player named Kent McClagan that I sent to, and drummer named Shiloh Stroman, that we're still friends. And there's some cool stuff on there, but nobody would put it out. I sent it to everyone. And it was like I was 23, 24.
Wow.
And that was that, and I didn't have enough money to put it out by myself.
Sure.
Then when I moved, it was a little disheartening. And then when I moved to New York, I started playing sessions with different guys because I wanted to. When I moved to New York, I only knew one person, so it wasn't It was
That's
almost starting from scratch. There was a drummer named Mark Dallio that had moved to New York from Denver before me. So when I called him when I got there and said, "Do you know anybody I can play with?" and he said, "Oh, actually, there's a couple guys that might want to get together and play." And that's how I found Jeff pretty quickly. And the funny thing about that is because Jeff is also from Colorado, but we didn't know each other there. He's just a few years older than me, so we never crossed paths. And he was also like a total phenomenon from a young age. He was, not only was he a couple years older than me, he was already in like a whole nother field then, So when I was say 18 and he was maybe 21 or something, it was just like a whole nother scene. So then he moved to New York, and I had heard that, even though I didn't know him. Other acquaintances said, "Yeah, that guy Jeff Davis, he moved to New York." I'm like, wow, okay, cool. So then one day he just opened his door in Washington Heights, and we became friends right away. And he likes to get together a lot. So, and he still does. Yeah. I think he probably has at least one session a week, every week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So then I met other musicians, and then called other musicians. And sometimes if I really liked the saxophone player, I would just call him and say, "Let's get together," because then that meant there would be other people that I didn't know, because there's a lot of eager people that would just want to get together and play in New York, which was also something new to me. Even though I had great friends in Denver, we kind of ran around in little circles, and that was it. It wasn't, you can't compare.
Yeah.
It's not in a place like Denver, but there's just so many musicians in New York that you can meet a new person every day. So when I didn't have a lot of gigs, I made it my objective to just try and meet as many people as I could, playing sessions in people's houses, not going to jam sessions. Something I enjoyed. I liked playing with people, like, let's try this, and I wrote this and this person wrote this. So that's how I started playing with Jeff, and that's how I met Ruben, the bass player on that record. Also through playing with Jeff. And I met Brian because I went to one of his gigs, and he was really nice to me and gave me a CD and said, "Welcome to New York." And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's really nice." So then I asked him to get together, and we played well together. And Ruben also had a studio.
Oh, okay.
It's like, well, this is a good band. And we played some gigs, and then I asked Ruben, can I give everybody some money, and can we make a record, and can you record it? And he got really good sound. And then I sent that to everyone, and nobody wanted it except for Clean Feed. And when Pedro got back to me, I was like, yes, somebody wants it. And remarkably, that first record was reviewed in the New York Times, which is pretty darn rare.
Yeah.
I have to say. someone's very first record has a New York Times review. So that gave me
kind of, yeah,
enthusiastic about this is possible. And then I was attracted to other labels because I like to buy records all the time. And so this is a really cool record label. I wonder if I could potentially work with them, you know, and so then I'd hatch other ideas and try to meet people. And of course it doesn't always work.
sure.
But then sometimes it does too. So then I also started having relationships with certain people that then I was able to work more with through the years.
Yes.
So it got a little bit easier after a while. It was like there was some, you know, it took a while to build a momentum. But then I started, you know, made different friends through different labels, and that luckily wanted to do, you know,
The music, yeah.
another project, and enjoyed the last one, and that's how it all developed. And I also really like playing a lot of different kinds of music, and there's a lot of different kinds of labels, so it's fun. I read a Paul Bley interview about that one time that was inspiring. He was talking about, like, you know, because he was making, at that time he was making records for Just in Time, and he was making records for People Chase and ECM, like, all at the same time. And I thought, well, that's fascinating, you know. So that was inspiring. So
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, it's you're like that as well. I mean, like you know, I love that you have this, you know, the trio with Michael and Matt, which is like kind of more out there-ish. And then, you know, you have like the steeplechase stuff and the clean feed stuff, and it's like, and it's the same guy, you know. So that's really cool.
Inspiring for that, yeah, totally. Yeah. And then I like to play also compositions that aren't my own, and I know that people want to hear that, so that also, and people want to put that out also. So it's like also a way for me, not that I wouldn't work on it anyway, but it's cool to dive into something with the objective to record it, and it's, you know, music by Bill Evans or Carla Bley or something like that, and really study that music and put it out. And then I've also put out records on Steeplechase that with original music and some pretty out stuff too. So Nils has also, he
opened up a little,
willing to go my way sometimes too, with some pretty funny stuff, some really out there stuff, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, with an opera singer that I think is really awesome, that he thinks is totally awesome too. So it's called Witness. I don't know if you ever heard that one.
No, I don't have that one.
I love that one. So
it's a Steeplechase?
Steeplechase record with a baritone.
Really?
Baritone.
Oh shit, I have to check it out.
Ben Goldberg playing contralto, clarinet, and 1 or 2 tunes on B-flat clarinet, but mostly super low clarinet. And then Russ Lossing playing piano.
Wow, man. Okay.
We were improvising most of it while the opera singer is singing different arias and stuff.
Oh man, I have to find it.
It flew under the radar. I think critics didn't really know. A couple critics checked it out and wrote about it, but I think others were kind of scratching their heads. But that's one, someday that people will talk about that one. I'm sure.
No, I wanted to ask you, like, you know, speaking of your records, I check out some of the rhythm sections you have, and it's like, you know, Mike Formanek and Billy Hart, or Jay Anderson, Adam Nussbaum, Bill Goodwin and Mark Helias. I love that trio. I mean, that's those two guys are just like, how did you I mean, I know, like, you know, Jay Anderson and Adam, like, kind of like a stable for Steeplechase, but like, how did you decide for these different groups? Like,
well, one thing that I really like to do, unless somebody else comes to me with it, is I really like to record music with people that I already play with. One exception to that was with Billy Hart. I'd never played with Billy Hart before, and I loosened that up. I mean, I do make records with people that I haven't played with before, like with Matthew Shipp, obviously. But but we already knew each other, and that was kind of in the making for years. But I was playing with Bill Goodwin in his band, and I was playing at that time with Mark Helias in his band. So, and they had never played together. So
really,
before that band, so we made recordings of that trio, and we did 2 tours of that trio. And yeah, so I also like putting people together that have never played before. But they're people that I know, so I know that it's. I have an idea of what it's going to sound. It's not like throwing darts at.
Yeah.
So I think, oh man, Bill Goodwin had a band called the Orntet that was dedicated to Ornette Coleman, and then I was playing gigs with Mark Helias, had a quartet with Mark Ferber on drums and Tim Byrne on saxophone. We played at Cornelia Street Cafe.
Really? Oh shit! And is this recorded or?
No.
Oh.
He recorded one of the sets, I know, and we listened to it at his house. But that band never made a record, but it was super fun. And then we did a gig with Dan Weiss too.
Wow! Oh man.
Trio, the rest of us. And so then I recorded with Jay and Jay Anderson.
Yeah.
On a couple of Chase things. So I played with him and I really love his playing. But then Niels Winther said, do you want to make a record with Adam Nussbaum? And I said, yes. So that's how that happened. So that's how that rhythm section happened. And made a bunch of records together. And it's really cool to listen to them with all the different leaders with that that stable rhythm section. But it is something that I think about, if combining people that I just want to meet. I just made a recording with Carl Berger and Matt Wilson because they'd never played together before.
Wow, man! Oh, that's amazing.
Of course, they really hit it off, and Jay Anderson was on that record, and he's played a bunch with Matt, but he had also never played with Carl. So we made a quartet recording that'll happen on a label called Steeplechase, which is a Danish label. I'm sorry, not Steeplechase. Oof. Okay, Stunt.
Yeah, the Danish one. Yeah, sure.
So I just made it's because we were just talking about Steeplechase.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't get a lot of sleep. So that's a really nice record.
Oh man.
So I like to think about that. I want certain people to meet each other. Is how certain lineups come together, and I know it'll be unique. I'm sure everyone does, but I want to make unique records that don't sound like other records.
Yeah, I think it's also nice for those guys because they know of each other, of course, but I think it's cool for them probably also.
Yeah, now I know that Carl and Matt are talking about doing something together, and so then I can be happy about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, how important was Matt for you? I mean, like, was he one of the first?
He was,
guys that gave you a lot of exposure in a way. I mean, or
yes, absolutely. So in 2009, I started playing with Matt Wilson Quartet. It came very quickly. It came about very quickly, which interestingly, I'm sure you've had this experience. Some musical associations, they just take off like a lightning.
Yeah.
Some things simmer for years and trickle out, but then sometimes it's you meet someone and then you immediately start working. And that's the case with that. Curtis Hasselbring had put together a big band, and we played. So then I got to play with Matt in that, and there was a part in it where we played a duo, and he liked it. And then we were talking, and I happened to have a copy of Bigwig actually in my bag, and so I said, "Hey, check this out if you want to." And then he told me that he listened to it in his car on the way home. So, and he had to drive back to Long Island, so I think he might have listened to most of it. So then he asked me to play some gigs in hospitals and old folks' homes. I don't know if they call them that, retirement homes.
Yes.
That he had gotten a grant to present music in these places. And on one occasion that we did that, I played with Jeff Lederer, who is the saxophone player in Matt Wilson's quartet, and he liked the way that I played with lead, call him. So right after that, he hired me to be in the band, and then I've been in the band ever since. And that band, especially for leading up to pre-corona times, was a heavy touring band, and we made we made like 3 or 4 records.
3, yeah, or 4, yeah.
Yeah, with that group over the years. Yeah, there's Hug, Big Happy Family, but that's not the quartet. Then there's the quartet plus John Tedeschi.
Yeah, Gathering, yeah.
Gathering Call.
Yeah.
So, so that we did a lot of touring, especially in the States. We did do trips to Chile and Mexico.
Oh, wow.
But he had a circuit, like we'd go all around the U.S. and do a lot of colleges and be guest artists and things like that, and teach. And he's a very good teacher. So also watching him teach helped me learn how to give a workshop, because he's such a master at it. Yeah. And he always every situation uniquely based on what's going on and how the participants play, and he doesn't just have a set thing that does everything. So yeah, he's been a big friend. And then we talk all the time, and we just recorded the thing with Carl, and we've done other things through the years, like made a record with Ted Brown, the great tenor player, and a record with Mary Halverson trio. And so in addition to his band, we've done a lot of fun things through the years. He's a marvelous guy.
Yeah, we did this talk like last year, and it was so much fun, you know. So much history, and you know, he can just, you just give him a name, Dewey Redman, and it was like for half an hour, it was like, you know, okay, you know, I loved it. I was like a small kid listening to that.
It's that he played in Dewey's band for 12 years.
Exactly. Beautiful. Yeah.
And he has such a connection to all the tradition, but then all the avant-garde, all the everything. He loves everything. He's not in one place with things. We're very happy to go in all these different directions. And
you're quite similar, I think, you two.
I think so. That's why I think we got along well. He and I are also working on trying to plan this duo recording. It actually got held up by Corona stuff, but I think it's now finally going to come together in a couple of months, and we've been talking about doing that for years. So it'll be fun to actually do it, because we did a few gigs like that. So
fantastic. Yeah, man, it's amazing. It's just like, I checked the records I have with you, and like, you know, from 2012 to now, I don't know how you find time to do the writing of your own, because, you know, it's like Alison Miller, like, you know, James Brandon Lewis lately, which is a killer group. Like and you know, Charlie Hunter. And I didn't figure this one out yet. How did that come into the equation? But
oh man, that was so much fun. And I played with Charlie for 3 years, and that band really toured relentlessly too.
But how did you hook up with him? I mean,
even though it was only 3 years we played, I mean, 3 years is still a long time, but we did so many gigs. A lot of bands don't play that many gigs in 10 years. So he wrote to me. It was like a dream scenario. He was playing with Curtis Folks. Yeah. Our awesome trio with Curtis Folks and Bobby Previtt. And then Curtis couldn't make a tour because he was touring with some pop star guy. I don't remember what was going on, but then I got an email. My name is Charlie Hunter, and I've been checking you out, and I'm wondering if you're free. It's like, no way, because to me that was really, because I was sitting in my car listening to Charlie Hunter, you know, 20 years ago, you know, when those records were coming out on Blue Note, and so that was, all my friends would get them. Would check him out, and like, wow, check that, like, is that one guy doing all that stuff? No,
exactly.
So that was how that happened. I had never met him before, and he asked me if I could play with, and that was with Bobby Previtt, and then we did tours with a couple different drummers, also with Scott Amendola out.
I love Scott. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that came about, and we still send each other stupid jokes and stuff all the time. Now he moved to I always get the Carolinas mixed up, but he's in.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting.
So that's when, you know, and he's also been touring a lot with he's touring with a great vocalist right now.
Yeah, I saw that. A female
with
vocalist.
Kurt, yeah. So
Oh, no, with Kurt. Really?
Yeah. And he also has been playing with vocalists in his band too.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I got to where I was doing a bunch of other stuff, and then he moved. But I always have a hope that we'll get back together again.
Beautiful, man. Yeah, fantastic. Cool, Kirk. I you know, thanks for taking this 1 hour just to share some of the thoughts. You know, I like
absolutely
in these early morning hours.
I've seen that you've been doing this with all these fascinating people that I love. So I'm happy that I get to.
Yeah, man. I love doing this. It's just like, you know, to being a musician, but also to hear your stories, and I really like hearing.
And it's really important. I don't know if you ever checked out. Like, I feel this kind of thing that you're doing is really important. If you ever checked out William Parker's books, the Conversation books, I tell everybody to check those out. They're put out by the Rogart label. There's 3 volumes, and he's just through the years had conversations with all these wonderful people. So it's not just like strictly like an interview. It's like this, where it goes, you know, back and forth, and it's all written down. And he said to me that it's really important that musicians do this kind of thing. It's of course journalists do it and critics do it, but it's also a very important piece of it that musicians are doing it too, because then people can get more of the pieces of the puzzle. Yeah, I like that. And it's also, I think about, you know, let's say in 30 years, that if this thing still exists, you know, like then someone will look back at this like, man, so check it out, you know, what did Kirk do in 2022, you know, or like. I hope so. It's I love the old interviews. I have to collect, you know, like the Steve Lacy Conversations book is amazing, and you know the big long Lee Konitz book with it's the whole in one long interview is fantastic. So these are my favorite kinds of things to read. Also, as a jazz studying jazz, is to read people's interviews and listen to people speaking. And it's a nice thing. Yeah, that way. So but cool, man. Yeah, thank you too.